I can't design for anything. So you want me to build a landing page? Like it's going to be terrible. So recognize like where you're really good. And that's why I like people who come in with kind of a core set of skills. I'm really good at these things. We go, okay, great. That's your starting point. You're really good at those things. Then we get into, okay, so what are you going to do over the next, 6 to 12 months to continue to maintain and be on top of that? And if they don't have something to tell us, they're out because they've got to have a plan for progression, whether they get a job today or they don't get a job for another few months, right? They have to have a plan of progression. So that's one thing that we look for right away. Then we go, okay, great. This is your resume today that you're giving us. What's your resume going to look like in 24 months, in 36 months? Like, let's brace, lay that out. What's it going to look like? Who are you going to be? And how is that going to benefit my company?
Hey everyone, welcome to another podcast episode here at HighLevel. We call them the Spotlight Sessions. And I have a very, very special guest who is dear to our hearts and very reputable in our community. If you haven't met Joe Rare, you might see him at an event. You might see him at one of our conferences. You might see him on a, session, a webinar. But Joe is someone who's what do I say? He's an OG of OGs. Like when I say that, he was one of the early adopters of HighLevel. And I asked Joe, hey, it's time that we jump on a podcast. And I know we've done, I think, a few like this. Maybe Chase has done one in the past with Joe. But either way, I wanted to get on a call with Joe and do an interview to kind of, first of all, help everyone that's inside of HighLevel understand how to build a team. So Joe and I got together to plan out this podcast. And here's our topic for everyone to kind of just lean in and maximize this episode. We're going to talk about how to learn in building a team with outsourcing, meaning like if I'm just starting out scratch or if I'm an agency that's been seasoned for a while, learning how to build a team with outsourcing is its own special skills. We're going to talk about three things. First one, hiring talent. Second one, creating a world of productivity to make sure there's systems and processes internally for that talent. And three is learning how to optimize the team and the structures themselves. But before we get into it, Joe, for those that don't know you, what's your story? I know you, I feel like at a personal level and watch your companies grow in many multiples at this point, but help us understand your story, where you're from, how did you find out about HighLevel back in the day?
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I'm probably it's somewhere in my DNA. It says entrepreneur in there. I've been starting businesses since I was 20 years old, and I sold my first company when I was 22. Then I got into real estate and I became an investor, and then I lost everything, and so got to go through all those ups and downs. I've owned tons of businesses that have either not done well or completely failed. But then, I figured some things out along the way. I took some advice from, Rob Bailey, who became one of, my most important, mentors and sounding boards. And as I was rebuilding my business around some advice that actually he gave me, I was launching a new agency. I was kind of getting things going. We finally hit some marks that I thought were great. We had, cash flow coming in. We're making really good money. I'm paying off the debt from my last failed endeavor, and I was using Infusionsoft, Scipio, ClickFunnels, Calendly, on and on and on, all these features. And Rob hit me up, and we were talking about building a tool. And he says, actually, I just met some guys. He goes, jump on a call. He goes, I want you to speak at my event. And I couldn't actually be there in San Diego for the trip, but he said, jump on. I want you to, talk to the guys there, give them your story and give them some advice. And I said, all right, cool. I can do that. And he says, but stay on because I want to introduce you to some people. And so that's the day that HighLevel launched. Right. And so Sean and Robin were there at the call, and I sat on and listened, and they gave the pitch. And I think it was halfway through, he was kind of like, this is how you do it. This is what we're going to be all about. And I was like, shit, sign me up. And so they couldn't even take a payment. And I signed up first, and they couldn't take a payment. And I was like, hey guys, like on the Zoom, I'm like, hello, there's nowhere to pay. Like, I don't know how to buy this thing. And so I ended up being invoice number one, two, three, and four. So I was the very first paid person of HighLevel. And that's how I got introduced to HighLevel. And then it really transformed my business, my first agency, which is in the wedding industry, and really transformed the way that we operated. And I mean, to be honest, profit margins, with this agency pricing, which you guys created and you ruined the entire market for everybody because no matter what software comes out, they get judged against this agency type pricing. And so the entire market has had to shift. And I know that they don't realize how big that was and how much your guys' pricing rolling that out changed the entire market and made so many things better for agency owners. It's remarkable, that one thing, and so yeah, it transformed my agency. Because we were in first, we're figuring this clunky thing out that was kind of working. Sometimes it didn't work. Shit broke all the time. And it was amazing though, the level of care that Sean had, Robin had, and still do. And you could go directly to them and be like, dude, this thing sucks and it's killing me right now. And they're like, hold on one sec, let us look at this. And this is boom, fixed. And you're like, no way, and so the early days were so cool for that kind of stuff. But then my virtual assistant team started servicing, obviously the HighLevel community. And we were the very first VA company to service the community. We've done every project that you can imagine. I was just on a podcast earlier today, and we just crossed 170,000 projects that our team has done. Somewhere just over 4 million hours of labor that we've taken off people's plates. And 65-ish% of that is all HighLevel stuff,
Yeah.
which is unbelievable. And it's so cool to be a part of it from the beginning.
Well, it's a full circle at this point because I feel like from when I first heard about you back in the day, along the same names of like Rob Bailey and Josh Nelson and early adopters, like I knew you focused on the servicing side, especially for our community, because you saw the
Yeah.
need. And
Mm-hmm.
early on, we were, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but it the software itself was in its early stages, right? What
Sure.
people have today when they sign up for an account is quite drastically different, right? Like, I mean, the way it looked, the way it felt, the way it functioned, everything was different.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we've almost like, what's the right way to say this? We've almost democratized the software industry where we listen to the agencies and go build. So every
Yeah.
single input of people is from folks like yourself and the teams that you've built and the services and the agencies that you have helped along with our community. So now we're at a point where we're at this evergreen mode of development and out developing everything and everybody around us.
Yeah.
So Joe, I like to truly believe at this point, you know a little bit about building a team and helping high levelers.
Yeah.
So let's talk about our topic, learning out how to build a team using outsourcing. The first thing I think we wanted to talk about is hiring talent.
Yeah.
What is your take on hiring talent? Let's talk about that. What are some mistakes people make? What are the things that high levelers should pay attention to when it comes to hiring talent?
Literally, when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is the word expert. And if the word's being thrown around, run for the hills. And this is something that we do just on an acquisition standpoint when it comes to talent, just making sure that we're in front of the right people, we're giving the right people opportunities. The idea of experts, like I'm like, there's very few experts in HighLevel. And the reason you know that is because the platform's changed so much, like you just said. Like I was the expert on the very beginning, but then it changed and morphed 50 times since then, and it continues. And how many new features are being released next month, right? Are we going to do another like 600, like crazy? And so I hate when people bring up the word like, I am a HighLevel expert. And I'm like, really? I'm like 30 days from now, you're not going to know anything about this whole new feature set or this change in this. I want people who have they're humble enough to recognize that they're always and forever going to be in the learning phase. So the number one thing we look for is people who are avid learners. People are going to continue to evolve and they're going to learn, and that's who they are, and that's part of their core of the personality that they have, is that they're going to be learners. So that's one of the first things that I would say. Um,
So how do you
then from
figure
there,
that how do you figure that out about themselves? Like, are they telling you, hey, I took a bunch of high level courses and I went to this event? I mean, what is a
well,
competency like measuring stick?
so yes, that's a great question. So one of the things I like to start with, and realize, like, I mean, we're at the point we have an HR team and they handle all of that stuff, but this is
Sure,
the
sure.
guide that we've given them from the beginning, which is simply start people. Where are you today? Okay, I am a high level, not expert. I am a high level user and I am great at these things. Okay, great. You cannot be great at the entire platform. There are so many skill sets and different personality profiles that it takes to work the entire platform. So I can't design for anything. So you want me to build a landing page? Like it's going to be terrible. So recognize like where you're really good. And that's why I like people who come in with kind of a core set of skills. I'm really good at these things. We go, okay, great. That's your starting point. You're really good at those things. Then we get into, okay, so what are you going to do over the next, 6 to 12 months to continue to maintain and be on top of that? And if they don't have something to tell us, they're out, because they've got to have a plan for progression, whether they get a job today or they don't get a job for another few months, right? They have to have a plan of progression. So that's one thing that we look for right away. Then we go, okay, great. This is your resume today that you're giving us. What's your resume going to look like in 24 months, in 36 months? Like, let's brace, lay that out. What's it going to look like? Who are you going to be? And how is that going to benefit my company? And that's somebody who has to be looking forward. They have to be seeing themselves into the future. They have to understand how to create value. And those are some of the things we do just from the beginning. And if they can get through those questions, then they've got a shot. And what we'll find out is that somebody who thinks that far ahead, they're career minded. So they're not going to come in and it's not going to be a transactional type hire where they come in and they're like, cool. And then they're like, oh, shoot, I can go get $5 more an hour over there. And then they're going to bounce and leave you. We don't want that. So we're looking for people who are career minded.
I love that. Now, how does that, on the topic of hiring talent, why does this matter to a high level agency today? Like if let's say um I'm starting out brand new as an agency owner, been doing this for like a year, and I haven't even had my first hire yet. Let's say that's my scenario.
Well, how great would it be if that first hire helped you build the rest of the hires and helped you build the rest of the team? So I look at everybody we bring in and I figure out how can they take us from where we are. And it could just be in a division of the company. So maybe it's, in our fulfillment division. How can that one person traject the company forward? It may be the first hire, but that first hire should lead to the next ones. So how that's why it's so important to understand where somebody wants to be, because you can also then create a vision for where that person fits into your dream of where you want your business to go. So taking that first person and saying, okay, what are their skill sets? Can we use them? Is that going to help the business grow? Second, what's their vision of where they want to be? And is that in alignment with how I want the company to grow over the next 12 months? And if those things align, you have a lot of opportunity with that person. If they don't align, they're probably going to cause you harm. Not in a vindictive way, but it's just not going to be great for your future. So you should look to somebody who has a better vision of the future.
Now, Joe, I'm sure you're familiar with the book, I think Rocket Fuel, where it talks about an
Yep.
integrator versus a visionary. Is that realistic from your experiences? Like, is that the way we should look at it? If I'm a visionary, my first hire or the talent that I'm looking to hire should be like an engineering minded person, so it covers my weakness. Is that what are your thoughts on that?
I think it kind of depends what phase of your business you're in. So when I'm starting a company, and we currently right now I operate 6 companies, um, fully run by virtual assistants. But the way that I structure it is I look at how does the business need to progress so that it becomes a profitable venture. If the business isn't making any money, it doesn't matter if you get an integrator. You need to be making money. And this is where I think that a lot of agencies get it wrong, is that they're looking for the things that they're reading in all these books instead of just making some money. So make some money, get some things going. But yes, I fully agree. I am not an integrator at all. Like I can't, and I'm terrible. And I had to hire somebody to be that side of the brain for the company. I am the visionary. I can set the pace. I can show you where we're going. I can explain it. I can story tell and make it sound incredible, and I can inspire everybody to want to go there, but I'm not going to take the company there. Somebody else has to be the one that's in like that operational seat that is going to manage the team. They're going to orchestrate the all of the projects and everything that needs to get done to take us from point A to point B. So I do agree with it, but I think that a lot of people are looking for that so early. You can look for it in a partner, and maybe you go to split it, split up your business and have somebody else be that for you. But I think you could also get pretty darn far, at least to the point that you're making some serious money, then be able to make the right hire for that integrator and be able to do it from a place like I have financial resources to do it. And now I'm hiring the right person who's going to be here for the long haul.
Yeah,
That'd be my 2 cents.
absolutely. And before we talk about our next pillar of conversation, which is the productivity side, systemizing and creating the process. Before we talk about that, can you unpack one of the things that you said? You said it's important to make money and don't just hire an integrator. And that is a very loaded phase that an agency goes through, sometimes in a trap for years. And they're just building, 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 and they never get to the market or they don't understand the economics of what they're offering. Like, help us unpack that a little bit before we go to the next thing, because I think it's really important on this conversation.
So, I mean, I think you said the words building, 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 and they never go to market, or they don't quite get out there. Your income is directly related to the number of offers you make to your market. So you can build all you want. You can make things look amazing. You can have the coolest funnels. You can have the most amazing workflows and automations, and all of these things can be the coolest. And they do all the most amazing things in the world. But if nobody buys your shit, it doesn't matter. And so, and trust me, like I was the perfectionist when it was like, hey, we're going to launch something. And I figured out, unfortunately, the hard way, that if you don't start asking people to buy stuff, nobody does. And so I kind of reversed my belief around it. And I knew that I wanted to have multiple companies. I wanted to do all these other things, and I wanted to solve all these problems for the marketplace. And the fastest way to money being in my bank account was asking somebody to give me money. So, hey, I have a solution that will serve you. Will you pay for it? Obviously, in better sales terms than that, but will you pay for it? And when
Yeah.
somebody says yes, now you have something to fulfill. You don't have anything to fulfill until somebody says yes. So when we go to launch a new business or a new service, we actually pre-sell it before we fulfill it. And we actually create the fulfillment process after somebody gave us money. And we do it in terms of more like we make them feel like a partner as we're going to roll this out. So, hey, we're going to sell you this thing. It's going to be awesome. I swear to God. And then go, now we're going to work side by side and we're going to make this amazing. And we're going to get their feedback and we're going to get all these things. And you do that with 10 of your clients. And all of a sudden you have an amazing fulfillment of this service. And now you can scale to the moon.
Yeah. So Joe, let's talk about this is exciting for me because as an old, previous agency owner, some of the things that you're talking about are the same traps I was part of. I had two agencies, went through the same cycle. The second time not so bad, but the first time was
Yeah.
brutal, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk about the second thing of the conversation, which is creating productivity within those team members once you bring them in. So like, what are some systems and what are some ways to create processes internally? Is it important to even have any processes? Help us understand
Wow.
what you look at to stabilize the talent that you bring in.
Yeah. If you try to hire somebody and then don't have a system for them to work within, it's going to be a train wreck and you're going to get nothing out of them. And so those systems inside your business, the most simple systems, if you want somebody to clock in and clock out, what does that look like? Have a process for that. Document the process, right? The cool part is that you can actually have your first hire document the process, and they can create your SOP for all of the stuff that you create and that you think that you've got to have for your business. They can create all of the SOPs for you in real time. And the best part is as they are helping you develop your business and they're helping you develop all of these processes, who do you think is going to be the best person to train another person to do it? That hire. So you have a really unique opportunity to leverage that first hire to build the rest of the processes. If you don't have a way for somebody to track their productivity, they're going to fail. If you don't have a strategy for communication, for training, they're going to fail. And so having those processes built out and at least walk through them to create it, because maybe it's as simple as like, you're like, I don't know how to do it. That's okay. Why don't you and your team member get on a Zoom call just like this, sit down and go, okay, great. Here's the stuff I need you to do. It's my laundry list. I've got all this stuff. I don't really know how we're going to make this a functioning process and system, but let's build it together. You
Yeah.
go, cool. Like, what technology do we need to do that? Okay, let's use ClickUp. Let's use Asana. Let's use Trello, whatever. Right? Let's do it inside HighLevel and create our own project management tool, whatever you want. Do it together, and you can create the system that makes sense in the moment. One thing that will happen is that you'll change it in the future as you get more people and you need to streamline it and it needs, more technology or more automation or all those things. But you have a starting point and have somebody else support you, and their ideas are going to trigger new ideas in you and back and forth. And that's how you guys begin. And that will help you develop a super deep relationship with that hire. And it'll also help you create the processes. So then you can bring on more people. So
Yeah.
hopefully that helps.
What I think is pretty funny. I mean, I'm a visionary similar to you, Joe, and I'm thinking back to like some of the first hires. Like the I did a miserable job in putting together the right processes and details because I was thinking macro picture everything and I wasn't good at details
Yeah.
versus the integrator that I brought in was like an analytical thinker, like he probably could have been like a CPA or like an accounting person, where I'm like writing stuff down on a napkin, and that's gonna be my checks and balances sheet where they're gonna need formulas on a Excel sheet. Like there's
Yeah.
a misalignment on what you think is a process versus what they need as a vision board or a process. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit? Because there's two different hats, two different types of people that are being kind of married together into the first phase of the business, right?
Yeah. So one thing that I learned, I don't know who I learned it from, but it's actually been really, really helpful both for me personally, just in the way that I operate, but also in the way that my teams end up operating, which is everybody consumes information differently, right? And so there's communication, kind of modalities that we all have, right? You can be visual, right, where you need to see everything. You can be auditory. That's how I am. I just need to hear it. So rather than read, I need to listen to an audiobook, and I consume that information a lot easier. I also typically don't need to take notes more than just like a little scratch, and that's about it. But then there's also people who they're going to be
Kinesthetic.
kinesthetic,
Yep.
right? And they're going to need to actually physically do stuff. And so that could be as simple as like they need to create a spreadsheet with a bunch of formulas on it because that's the thing that they're doing. Well, then you also, the fourth one is that you get people who are what's called auditory digital, where they actually need to internalize everything that's been shared with them. They may need to sit down and write notes. They may need to summarize what they heard and learned and thought and felt. And then they need to think about it and then make a decision. And so that's a really helpful thing for sales, but it's also a really good thing for your team. So if you can actually understand everybody's going to consume information differently and process it, so understand that and then realize that me sketching on a napkin isn't going to hit everybody's modality of learning.
Yep.
So instead, do something that will. So the method that we use is we create SOPs with video, screenshots, and text. And then we have activities inside the SOP. So as an example, we use a system we call play, pause, do. So if we're going to teach somebody to do something, we're going to do it on video. There's your visual. Screenshots, visual, right? Then we're going to have audio. So somebody's going to be saying what they need to say. That's the audio part of it. Somebody can just shut it up. They can just listen. Then there's the kinesthetic, which is going to be where we tell them to pause the video, do what you just learned, physically do it, then come back and play the video. Play the video, pause the video, do the thing, play the video, pause the video, do the thing. They are literally hitting every single communication modality that there is. And you will end up with massive retention when somebody's learning something new. But not only that, you're not going to leave people behind where they're not understanding what you're saying. You guys are communicating on all these different wavelengths. It gives everybody the capability to kind of join in and be on the same page.
I
Does that make
love this
sense?
because, yeah, I love this because when you create processes, um, I think the key is to create something that's reasonable that both parties agree. And then if you have what's the word, the vision to allow the team member or whoever to be part of that process, you can create a much easier level of accountability. Can you
Absolutely.
talk about how you create that accountability? Like what does that look like versus you just going top down and saying, do this, and this is the only way to do this. Like help us understand the different approaches on accountability.
Well, I think there's a little bit of both, right? Sometimes it's as simple as this is how it needs to be done. Period. End of story. Like, don't alter this because this is how it goes, right? And then you say it's pretty easy to form accountability when you're like, did you do it exactly the way that it says? Because if you didn't, then that's not a good output, right? And so that's one method. Other things need somebody else's input. They need a different level of thinking, and they need to be proactive in finding methods to solve problems and create solutions. And depending how those solutions play out as an output, we can then track those back and say, was that a good decision? The way that you thought that through, did that actually create an output that was a good result for our client, a good result for our company, whatever that might be? And then we track that back. Okay, if it was a negative output, then we can come back and say, well, what was the thought process? And that's how we can keep improving performance. Is we say, well, what was the thought process? Why did you choose that? Okay, I thought this. Okay, great. Let's not do that. Let's try this next time. And then you can watch. And if their output continues to be poor, you know that something's happening on the front side, and we can basically come back and forth and we can decide, hey, either you change this or you need to go. That's one thing. Or are they picking it up? Are they just not quite getting it right? Is there a method that we need to support them so that they understand more of what we're trying to get out of them? At the end of the day, the output of what anybody's doing is the result that we need to measure. They can, well, then you can go with speed, right? But once we get that output and we say, okay, great, this was done well, awesome, good job. And we have somebody who tracks for positive and negative outputs on projects and so forth. Like we've done so many projects, we need to know, how is somebody shaking out? If this person's done 200 projects and we've had, 90 revisions, that's not good, right? But if you get
Yeah.
somebody who's done 200 projects and it's like there's been, 8, 10 revisions, we go, okay, that's actually pretty good output. We don't need to kind of guide them and coach them through. And so we know that we can go a little more hands off with this type of person and maybe reduce, our oversight so that we're not micromanaging. But that person with kind of a high yield of revisions or needs more touches and this and that person needs more coaching, or they're in the wrong role. And we kind of figure those out as we go. So that's a quick synopsis on how we evaluate people in real time, project by project by project.
Yeah.
And I think
Uh, wh-
everybody should be doing something similar.
Yeah, I love that. I think the other thing that we should kind of highlight on before we go to the third pillar of conversation is you said you're gonna change things that you built, right?
Yeah.
Like for you, that I get what you mean because like what you're building to get to, 10K a month versus 100K a month versus a million a month, like these are all three different types of processes,
Yeah.
and these processes outdate themselves really fast. Trust me, I know at high level because we roll out so many things in 1 week. things will outdate itself just because you launched a 5-day challenge. I promise you the features around that challenge will outdate itself. I know that from firsthand experience,
Right.
just doing our AI stuff. But either way, help us understand how to cover for that. Like, what is the insurance, play to either stay relevant in the process so you're consistently changing and making sure the team is happy with those changes? Or what are the things that you recommend we have in place to brace for the change?
Well, I think we're always watching technology first, right? So, the perfect example, like in our company, we were using Asana way before ClickUp ever existed, right? ClickUp is obviously a far superior platform in so many ways.
Yep, we use
How
ClickUp and came from Asana just like what you're describing.
Yeah. And so what was interesting was I went to the ClickUp team and I said, cool guys, sell me on this platform. Like, here's exactly what we do. Come join me inside Asana. Look at what we're doing. Look how we're using it. Here's the things that we do. We also use Slack over here. So like, walk me through where there's an improvement. And we will jump ship and we will bring hundreds and hundreds of seats into ClickUp. And they couldn't sell me because they literally their advice is there's not really a reason to change. Like, what the way you use the platform, you won't gain anything coming over to us. So I give ClickUp a massive amount of credit for that and giving us that advice. But we went to them and said, look, like, this is the next hottest, greatest, and latest thing. Show us how this is going to improve our business and make us more efficient. And the problem was they didn't have, they said there's nothing that's going to improve your efficiency. There's nothing that's going to make what you're doing the way you're doing it better. It's going to increase your costs. You're going to have massive unrest as you make all these changes. And there's nothing that's really going to be that monumental of a change. And so we said, cool, like, we'll stay where we are. However, inside Asana and the way we use it, we've modified a lot of things. We've changed automations because we have way more people and we have way more oversight, and there's thousands of more projects. And so more people need notifications and certain phases of projects need to be. So we went from this very, very simple process that was like, cool, here's a task, somebody's doing it, here's the check off, complete, right? Super easy, to now there's 50 automations that kick off that go into HighLevel that notify people over here, and on and on. And that's just continued to evolve. And so on the technology side, that's one piece of it, right? How do you create more efficiency as you start to grow bigger and you need more, uh, you know, more layers in your output? So that's the first. I mean, you've got to be paying attention to that. And then as your company and your organization grows, you have to be able to create something that's replicable, right? That somebody could step in and do if somebody else gets hit by a car. And so we start building something, we go, hey, there's this awesome, strategy we came up with and this and that, but it's like, oh, but only Paulson knows it. Well, that doesn't work because if Paulson's sick, who steps in and supports where he was? And so it's like, that doesn't work. We need to simplify it. It can't be this like unique, nobody knows how to do this thing. It's got to be simple. So it's always changing and making sure that your systems remain relevant for the output that you need, depending on your size, your scale, your staff size, uh, clients, type of client you have, project based, like whatever it is that you're doing. So that's a few ways.
I love it because as we are seeing a rise in like SaaSpreneurs and software oriented people, they're starting to have their own specific specialized, solutions, and a
Yeah.
lot of times people feel like they're solving unique problems, and in reality in digital marketing none of these problems are too unique where another agency hasn't solved it. I mean,
Yeah.
and another SaaSpreneur hasn't solved it. We know it's not too unique where you do have to evolve. So Joe, let's talk about the third thing, which is learning how to optimize the teams and structures. Well, I don't want to say, Joe, teach us how to fire people, but help us understand what do you do to optimize teams and structures?
Yeah, the first thing we always do is we look at the value somebody's providing in their role. And so we had it, I don't know, a year or two back. Somebody was in a role and we thought they were great and they were doing awesome. They've got great output. Um, The problem is they were starting to get slower. Productivity was kind of declining just a little bit. It just taking longer to get the same thing done. And the issue was they were kind of getting bored. And so, it's like, well, hey, you need to speed up your output. We should be able to get more out of you. Every dollar counts. And so when we look at that and we can't change their behavior because it's a personality that they're just kind of getting bored, we ended up replacing them, and then we stepped them back and said, hey, where else can we fit this person in to where we could challenge them with something new? And so then we found a slightly different role, same skill set, but a slightly different role that gave them something new to spark their interest. And so we do like, now look, if somebody's just underperforming and they won't change, and you can't convince them to improve, you can't force them to improve, then they got to go. And I'm a firm believer, like if you break rules, if you are disrespectful, like if you do things that are unacceptable to us, like gone. It doesn't matter who you are in the business, you're gone. So I do have that level of like I don't give a shit, and like nobody breaks these, we have some boundaries and nobody breaks through those. But other than that, we try to just reposition people to where we give them some excitement so that they're constantly learning, they're constantly doing new things, they're challenging themselves. It can get really boring if somebody's in a role and they're just kind of doing the same thing every day. And it's okay. So can we roll a new piece of technology in to excite them? So, is there a design technology that we can use? Is there an AI tool that we can use that's different that they have to learn and they have to stretch themselves? Those are the kinds of things where we want to try to optimize and get the most out of people. That's one of the ways that we do it.
Now, let's say someone is in the right seat and their maximum production, like there's like a rock star, right? Like how do you double down on that person? Like what is the upside of restructuring in teams? Like how do you grow this person within the company?
If they're ripe for a leadership role, then we allow them to be a leader. And the way that we do that is say, hey, listen, like, well, let's just say a graphic designer as an example, who's just, they're rocking, they're rolling, they're always great, everything's amazing. There's only so many hours in a day. Doesn't matter. You can't get more out of somebody than the hours that they work. So how can we make them feel like they've got a higher level of importance in the company so that they have a new level of excitement? Maybe we move them into a leadership role. Hey, we brought in two new graphic designers. You're going to manage both of these people and you're going to be responsible for their output. When they run into a challenge and they need support, you're the go-to, right? And we can kind of start doing some of that. It doesn't mean that they move into a manager role, but maybe they're leading a small team. Maybe they are ready for a management role, and we can kind of reposition people in that sense. However, then there's always the caveat to that, which is sometimes the people who are rock stars and they're in certain roles, the moment you try to make them something that they're not, their production goes down and they get unhappy. And I actually had that exact thing happen about, I guess it was 3 years ago. A key member of our team, one of the highest level people in the entire company, I wanted to move her up a level and into a legitimate executive role. And I was putting a lot of pressure on her to make that move, replace yourself, hire somebody under you, replace yourself. There was massive friction, and I couldn't get her to do it. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. This is the obvious next step. Like, there's nowhere else for you to go but up. And it turned out self-sabotage. She burned a client, something, bad went down, and literally she quit. Like, and it happened at a time that I was sitting on an airplane 30,000 feet in the air, and I see this come through Slack. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And after all of the heated emotions and me being pissed off and all the things that go on, I finally realized, I'm like, I did that. I tried to put somebody into a position that they were not interested in, ready for, skill set for, but I felt like they could be if they just got there. All you got to do is get there and we'll take care of the rest. And it wasn't. And I almost, you know, sabotaged my own business because I was trying to do something that was not the right fit. So there is both sides to it. So I would tell everybody be very, very cautious. And this is why one of the things we implemented in the hiring process is where do you see yourself? What's your resume in the future? So here's where you are. What's your resume in the future? And we want to do that over and over with them. So a year after they're hired, okay, great. Here's where you are. You've done this over the past year. Where do you see yourself in 12 months? And do it again so that you get a grip on who they want to be and where they want to be in your company.
Yeah. This conversation, this podcast has been, I feel like it's a review of the last like 5, 6 years of what I've seen and watched SaaSpreneurs grow, agencies grow, even within ourselves at high level grow. It's been quite insightful, Joe. What are some final things you can share on building a team that's outsourced or even within like what you have so much experience. You've catered and serviced over like I don't know 1,000 high levelers or even more that you can count, but like help us understand what the your vision for 2024 on when it comes to this topic of outsourcing.
I think I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to outsource, but I think that there's a lot of challenge that you can run into because the cost of entry for somebody to become a virtual assistant, as an example, an outsourced team member, the cost of entry is zero, right? There's not much. Anything that anybody wants to learn is available for free on the internet, right? Somebody can actually cognitively learn everything there is to know about high level without ever actually logging into high level because there's videos on everything. And so I think be very cautious in how you pursue a candidate to hire. And so try them out. Make sure that you're testing skills. Make sure that if you choose to work with a company, they're a reputable company. They've been around, things like that. They've got other clients that you can recognize and say, hey, how's this person? Right. Do some of that on the front end. That's it. But the opportunity is unreal due to some of the things, cost leverage, but being able to build teams that give you the lifestyle that you actually want. And that's kind of my core claim to fame. The thing that I'm probably most known for is that all six of the companies that I have are 100% operated by virtual assistants. The opportunity for you as an agency to have somebody support you and even be the opposing side, maybe they're going to be the integrator for you. They can be outsourced. You don't have to have an integrator that's a local dude sitting next to you, gal sitting next to you. That doesn't have to happen that way. My integrator is in the Philippines, and the things she can do, I don't have a clue how much it would cost me to hire somebody local to have the same talent. She's unbelievable. And I don't think that we could be where we are today without her sitting in her role. She's that incredible. So I would say for everybody who's looking to grow their business, build their business, um, dude, get it off your plate, outsource it, do it project-based work, build internal teams, let them help you build the rest of your team and processes and systems. Like outsourcing is the way to go when you're trying to get going and when you want to get started. So that would be my 2 cents.
I love that. So today we talked about learning how to build a team that's outsourced. We talked about three pillars of conversations, which is hiring talent, systematizing and creating processes internally, and third one, learning how to optimize and structure the team properly to maximize what you have. Joe, I appreciate you saying yes to us. This was an incredible episode. I can't wait for everyone to hear this.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
And looking forward to seeing you at our event. I know you're coming to the
Yeah.
summit. We had talked about it. Anything you want to share about that for those that are kind of on the fence, maybe?
Oh, you got to come. Yeah. If you're on the fence and you haven't bought a ticket yet, you need to hurry up because this is, if nothing else, this is just where you shake hands and it's name to face. You besides the little social media icon we all see all the time, it is the place to network. The relationships you build just going to the summit or any of the events. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, but the summit particularly is just off the charts. There's great education, amazing speakers, but you're going to get face time with the people that are in the community solving real world problems for businesses. It's the relationships you build are bar none better than any other, event that I've ever been to. So get your ass to the summit.
I love it. Thanks, Joe. Good seeing you again.
You
We'll
got it,
see
man.
you soon here in the
All
community.
right. See you,
Okay,
man.
bye for now.